In Youngstown's steel shadows, a kid devoured true detective horrors and walking tall vengeance with no law enforcement bloodline, just a raw pull to chase deviance's dark heart. From Secret Service streets to federal task forces with the DEA and FBI targeting drug traffickers and outlaw motorcycle gangs, Detective Ken Larson unmasks the badge's evolution. Black and white rookies to honorable guardians. Fairfax Detective Ken Larson, Undercover Exposed. This is his story.
Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Yeah, my name's Ken Larson. I'm a retired Fairfax County detective, and I worked for the Bureau for the FBI for 12 years.
Okay. All right. For the audience, this is going to be a unique one. We haven't had anybody in a situation, I'm going to just call it, for lack of a better term, kind of long-term undercover, deep undercover, specifically pertaining to motorcycle gangs. But before we get there, tell me how you end up in law enforcement. Because in '83, you start with the Secret Service Uniform Division. How do you get there?
So I was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio, right? A very blue-collar steel town. Great family, great childhood, supportive parents. But I was always fascinated with law enforcement. Even as a kid, there was no law enforcement history in my family. Nobody was police officers. It was all really blue collar workers in steel mills and companies that supported steel mills. So I guess it was really early on. I was kind of fascinated with deviants or evil or bad guys, so to speak. I remember my mom, we were in a grocery store, and I would always go to these, I don't know if you remember these True Detective magazines, right? And I think she always watched me, like, she stay over here and I'm going to go shopping, and I would always pick one with True Detectives, and I was just reading those magazines, and I was always fascinated with the murder type cases and stuff like that. So she said, do you want one of those? And she bought it, and I read that, and I would ask Mom, they didn't really have a lot of money. I said, can you get another one of these? And I was, again, it's that fascination with the good versus bad. Why do people commit violent or bad things? And that's always stuck with me. It was always a fascination of the mentality of evil people or bad people. And so when I laugh a little bit about, I watched a movie in the 70s, Walking Tall, Joe Don Baker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, okay, this is what I want to be. I was like, I'm 14, 15 years old, and I want to be a cop. I love the action, sounds so sexy, and I want to be involved in all that type of confrontations and cases, and doing what's the right thing to help people that are being victimized. So it always stuck with me. And then eventually, my hometown, I went to Youngstown State University, and the history of Youngstown was it essentially died in 1979, and that's when all the steel mills closed, and unemployment was 22%. And I realized that it wasn't going to be the future of me, right? So I actually took a job, with the government, and I moved. I didn't say this, but I moved to Washington, D.C. as a GS3, as a clerk for the FBI for about a year, right? In June of 1980. And I left house, and I never went back, right? I never went back to Youngstown. And again, as we discussed, I wasn't there as a clerk much. I went to the Secret Service, and then I was there for a couple of years, and then I went to Fairfax.
Did you have a goal though? In the beginning, did you go, I want to be with this department? I mean, you start as a clerk with FBI, but you end up in the uniform division of the Secret Service. Going through the process, did you have a goal of where you wanted to be?
Secret Service, I was hoping would be a little more challenging, a little more interesting, right? But it wasn't. I'm not bad mouthing it. It is what it is. I have to say that when I went to the Secret Service, the training in Glencoe and the Secret Service Academy in Maryland was excellent. I mean, I never shot a gun before. They taught me discipline. They gave me the basic structures of how to be a respectful, moral law enforcement person, right? And then once you're cut loose from Glencoe and Maryland and Beltsville, you go do your assignment, right? And my assignment was I spent 2 hours in front of the Cuban embassy, and then I would go and drive a patrol car around in Northwest DC. And even back then, I don't want to say I was a troublemaker, but I always kind of went against the grain, right? And I explained by telling you that when you're a patrol officer driving your Secret Service Uniform Division car, your goal is to hit certain embassies and chanceries, and you're just supposed to do your checks, right? Well, if I'm in a police car and I was trained to be a police officer, I'm going to go do my checks, and then I'm going to go look for trouble, right? When I say look for trouble, I'm going to go look to lock somebody up, right? And that was always, that was a thing that you weren't supposed to do. The commander was a midnight shift, so there's always, you're in DC, you work at midnight shifts, you're in a police car, and you have arrest authority, and you've been trained to do it. Okay, so I did it, right? But that was not what you were supposed to do. That's like, Larson, what are you doing? You're here for protection, not to be a cop. That's why they have MPD. Okay, all right. So that was quickly where I knew. I did a little less than 2 years. What really solidified the fact that I knew I had to leave was I got transferred to the White House duty. And in the White House, it was under Reagan, that was, you really, literally, you sit in a booth and you check passes. That's what you do. And I'm like, this is not what I want to do. I'm antsy here. I could care less about the people, the press passes coming in. It's just like, I need to move on. So I talked to a friend of mine at the time, and Fairfax County in the 80s was booming, right? And they had one of the best paying jobs. They were hiring a lot, and so I just decided to apply for them, and they hired me in 85.
But it's interesting, that same theme kind of follows you, where you get in trouble. I think it's funny because what you're talking about really, I resonate with. Getting in trouble with bosses because you want to do
the job
above and beyond. So, like, for example, you're in the jump out squad for narcotics, and you want to do the bigger cases.
Yeah, always.
But your bosses are giving you grief about that.
And I respect that, though, right? I mean, like, my boss was a great supervisor. And like when I gave you that little story about, he says, hey, Larson, come to my office. I really respect my boss. He was a great guy. And he understood. He could see my personality. He's like, Kenny, we're here to clean up the neighborhoods, right? We're here to get the street dealers off, not to work cases. If you want to do that, we'll make the opportunity to go do that. So a good supervisor will see that and assist you in going to where you want to do, or wanting to fulfill whatever goals you want to, types of cases that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't say it in a negative way, like, Larson, you're pissing me off. He just saw, as a good boss, you're a good fit here, but it looks like you're maybe a little challenged and you want to go and do something else. Is that true? And I was like, yes, sir, that's true. Because like I told you, when we make these arrests, I'm quickly flipping these people, right? They don't want to go to jail, right? They want to save their own butts, so they're willing to cooperate and so forth, and that goes to a next level of cases. That's not the jump out level.
Right. And you, I don't know, maybe fair to say that you had a pretty good knack of making informants.
Yes.
And that's the lifeblood of a good detective.
I believe it is. We had that conversation where sources and informants is the blood of a good case worker, right? Especially when you do proactive organization type cases. You need good sources, and sources are a problem. All right, they're a handful. But if you get a good one and you get good sources, I mean, you get good cases, right? So what's the old saying? No case, no problems, right?
Yeah.
Big case, big problems. Well, I was always a big case, big problems guy because, there were other people in the office who just wanted to sit in front of the computer and do nothing. And even if I asked them, hey, could you come out and, do surveillance for me? Well, no, because it's after 7 o'clock. They're in every office, right? So, yes. Getting individuals to cooperate I think it's an art. But, I'll be perfectly frank with you. I could even tell you a couple of stories if you want to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Helping an individual when they're at their worst, if they choose to cooperate, has been a great beneficiary to the individual. It benefited me as far as a case and moving forward. But I could tell you a specific individual that he belonged to an organization and he was eaten up with drugs. He knew he was in trouble. We got him in a conspiracy, and he was, up until recently, and this has been decades ago, always reaching out to me. He says, I'm coaching my son's football game. My son's going to Virginia Tech. And he would always say, this would not have happened if I never met you. And I put him in prison, right? I put him in prison. I gave him a good, I told the United States attorney, he gave good information for him, and he got a reduced sentence. But he got out and he reached out to me. He didn't have to, right? But he's just one case where, you're flipping a source. They're doing what they are going to have to do for their own selves to save their own butts. But also, in the big picture of things, he became a father. He said, before I was not a father, before I was a drug addict, before I was beating people up, and I knew I had young kids, but I didn't care. I was not in control of my life. The drugs and the power and the violence was in control of my life. And going to jail and talking to you changed my life. And he's just one example of a guy that had reached out, right? I would like to hope that in my career, I had made that type of influence on other people. Maybe,
it's interesting because it always seems like it's an adversarial process, but when you get down the line, you actually sit down with these guys and you get to know them as people. Not only do I think you see them as differently, but they see you as different, and
they trust.
Right.
There has to be that that trust. Their trust is everything, and honesty and trust. It's like, I'll do my best to help you. I can't promise you anything. I have an influence on the United States Attorney's Office. I could tell them this, or if you do something like that, I can't promise you. But let me tell you, I've done this for some time now, and I think it's going to be to your best interest. You ultimately have to make that decision, man. Because you know what? I would always say, if you don't want to help yourself, there's always somebody else behind you that I could do. And it's your call.
Yeah.
But if you are honest with me and you trust me, I will trust you. We'll have a good relationship, and I think your life will be better. And ultimately, it's like, I hope their life is better.
Yeah. Eventually, you get to what you consider, what you have mentioned, as your best job ever. You're with the DEA task force.
Yeah.
How old are you when you get there?
I'm in my 40s. Yeah, mid 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're there and you get to do the big cases. You get to follow up with cases that you think are worthy.
I do. I took the spot of another task force officer who got promoted and went back to the Fairfax, and he had left me a couple of good cases that I just jumped on and went through the case files and found that there were individuals that he had put in federal prison, Bureau of Prisons, and I just decided, reached out to the prosecutor and just, you just refresh the case and you're going like, well, have we interviewed this guy? He's in prison. He pled guilty. Says he has information, but I don't see any follow-up interview. So I asked the boss, and again, it goes back to supervision. Big proponent of good supervisors. A lazy supervisor would say, no, case is closed, man. You don't need to go talk to him. Yeah, but you know what? The guy just said this, and this, and he's in prison in Pennsylvania, and it's a day trip, and let me go talk to him. He's willing to talk. What do we have to lose here, right? Sure, I could just sit here and just close the case, and statistically, we're done. So it was going through the cases and then going and talking to people, and it's amazing. They're like, well, I go up there and I knock on the door, and they're like, "Who are you?" And I just tell them, I'm this guy who worked this case with so and so, and we're just following up. He's going, "What took you so long? Why did it take so long for you to?" I'm almost done with my sentence, and I said, "I can't. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm just doing the best I can do. But I'm here for you, and if you want to talk to me, that's great. If you don't want to talk to me, that's great also. I'll just drive back home." Yeah. No, I'll talk to you. And, you get the legal attorneys talking to each other, and all of a sudden, it's like you are able to connect a lot of other individuals in this conspiracy of which he's doing time and other people are doing time. And then the other individuals who he's talking about, they're still out there slinging dope, right? So like now I've got my 4 witnesses who will testify against this guy. And this guy is out and about, still doing his stuff. And we would get a team together and we would kind of target him, right? Go to the jails and who were individuals that may be in prison for selling dope, his dope. And as like I said before, it's a puzzle. And it's a fun puzzle to put it together, right? It's kind of like that hunt. It's like, okay, so this guy here, who's really the drug dealer, who's really hurting the families, who's really ruining neighborhoods. This is during the crack epidemic. He's still out there slinging dope. And he's the big guy. And these little people are in jail. These families over here, their homes are being, and their families are being, wreaking havoc in them, and they're getting evicted because they're smoking crack all the time, and the neighborhood is going to crap, and let's get him. We have the witnesses, and we have the phone numbers, and we have all the circumstantial evidence. Let's go get him. And that was fun. It's, like I said before, it's part of the hunt.
Yeah, so you're working...
that hump.
Yeah, you're working conspiracy cases, and I think you're right in your element. Can you talk about the importance of a good assistant United States attorney, AUSA?
If you don't have one, if you don't have one that respects you, that gives you the authorization and the authority, that's the key, right? Because we don't want to have a clown. There's some clown prosecutors and there's some clown detectives, and you have to have that respect. And if they see that you're bringing them good cases, good witnesses, good evidence, they're aggressive. They're like, let's write up a complaint. Let's go lock them up. Bam. I mean, that's how you go do it. You go lock them up, and then what's that guy going to do? You sit down in the room here and going, hey, listen, man, I got you here, here, and here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste of what's against you. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
If you want to go to prison, I'll go and I'll do another case. You go to prison. It's your life, not my life. You know, a lot of times, you know, you get the rebellious ones and a couple of the ones that want to go to trial, and we go to trial, and that's a different havoc. That's a lot of work when you go to trial. But we win. I mean, we were in a very good Eastern District of Virginia district there, and had great prosecutors, and that was the key. If you didn't have a good prosecutor, you're banging your head against the wall. It's like, why am I doing this? If nobody's going to go to jail or nothing's going to be done, there's not going to be any change, then why am I doing it?
Yeah. How far along in your career until you start, and where are you at? Are you with the DEA task force? Are you at the FBI task force? Because you bounced around a little bit.
Yeah.
How far along, and where are you when you start your motorcycle gang, your outlaw motorcycle gang cases?
There was the one, the DEA case, we worked with ATF, where we had a couple members of the Alexandria chapter of the Pagans at the time. They were selling methamphetamine, and they were committing acts of violence, and we had gotten information from sources and so forth, and so we were able to execute a bunch of search warrants, get some arrests, and put them in jail, right? Not just members of the Pagans, but there were also other peripheral guys that got arrested within the conspiracy. So it wasn't really targeting the Pagans. It was just generally it was a drug conspiracy case, and they were involved. We weren't targeting them; they were just part of it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is when you're telling this story, right? And you and I talked about this. I had a lot of detectives in my career who were just fascinated with motorcycle gangs. It never, but I think you had the same attitude that I did. It was like, yeah, they just happen to be motorcycle gang guys, and we're going to go after these guys, right? And so, can you talk about the appeal, right? What draws people into these outlaw motorcycle gangs, and kind of paint a picture for the audience, because some people may be watching this and have no idea what these guys are about.
Well, I have personal opinions, and it's just that, personal opinions. But having been with them and around them, a couple of the things that I noticed, that many of them see, and I'll call it the club, I would see that they are a gang if they're committing criminal acts as an organization or as a group. That's a gang. But they would say they see the club as their family. Some of them are really their family, because you know what? They didn't have a family. I had one guy, he was a member. He's like, man, I don't know who my dad was. My dad was in prison. My mom was a prostitute. I never had anything. And this is the closest to the family I have. And that was his attraction, and it, let's be honest, if you really out there, if you wearing these colors and you're riding a nice loud Harley and you're with a group of people, it empowers you, right? You have a family here, even though you better watch these family members, because they're going to probably stab you in the back at one point in your life, right? They like to call it a family or a brotherhood, but that brotherhood is really thin. But some of them are sincere. I mean, that's their existence. They like the group atmosphere, right? They really call them the brothers, even though, again, that brotherhood is very thin. Because if that brother, one day I may be a brother of you, but if I'm in trouble, you're expendable, right? And it's either going to be my ass or your ass, and it ain't going to be me, right? So I'm going to say whatever I want to say. So, and there are individuals that would go to prison and stay in prison, and they won't breach that brotherhood. They'll be loyal to it. So going back to what's the attraction is, I think it's that sense of belonging, right? A lot of individuals, I found them, weird as it sounds, many of them I feel like are like insecure, right? And they feel that this bond between the so-called brotherhood makes them feel secure, because they've been a nobody, right? So, and then, like we discussed before, that is empowered with the fact that It's this commitment to one another. It's enriched by drugs, power, money, women, sex, parties. It makes it sexy. And you know what? When I walk into a bar or I walk into a 7-Eleven and I have my colors on, people look at me. But if I didn't have these colors on and I didn't have a brotherhood and I walked in with just a blue collar shirt, nobody looks at me. I like to be looked at. And being looked at is empowering, right? It's empowering. If it boosts that ego, it boosts their self-worth, and they're willing to, and better be willing to kill or be killed for whatever their belief is, whatever that club is. So people are attracted to that, because if you don't have that in your life, maybe I'll just join a club and I'll be recognized, because otherwise I'm just a mope, right? So yeah, it's sexy, it's powerful, right?
Yeah.
And people get I mean, even like police officers are very similar, right? I got a badge and a uniform. I walk into a 7-Eleven, I'm going to get recognized, right? Good or bad. I like to think it's good, right? I believe it's good. I like to keep it that it's good, right? Because when I was a kid and when I saw a police officer, I admired them, right? I was like, that's me, man. That's what I want to be. I want to be Joe Don Baker. I want to walk around with a big stick and then, get the bad guys. And so it's very similar, colors, a badge, sense of power. It's sexy.
Yeah.
It's meaningful. Of course, police officers have rules. They have their own political rules, right? Yeah. But they can break them all the time.
Yeah.
We can't. If we break the rules, well, we're going to lose our job.
So for the audience, Ken keeps mentioning colors, and essentially, Ken, you correct me here, but colors it's basically a vest with patches all over, and these patches mean certain things. They'll designate the specific motorcycle gang, but one of the things that you typically see on these patches, most of the time I would think, is a little patch that says 1%.
Yes. Yeah.
What does that mean? What does 1% mean?
The old story is, it's AMA, American Motorcycles Association, made a statement back in the 30s. I don't know if this is folklore or it's all the truth, but bottom line, there was a melee or a fight, I believe, in California. I don't hold much credence to it, but where there was a bunch of fights and the press came out and asked the AMA, who are these people that are starting all these fights and all stuff? And the AMA came back and said, well, they're motorcyclists, but it's only the 1% that make all these problems. And that's what started it, right? That's the folklore. That's what we've been taught or told, right? And they'll tell you that, even the 1%ers that you're with or mingle with, whether it's undercover or not, they'll tell you the same thing. Because that's where it all started, man. But it's all bullshit, because I heard that was staged back then anyway. Right? So that 1% means a lot, though, because that 1% is a patch that represents that the 1% are the ones that don't go by the rules. For an example, like back in the day, a true 1%er was an individual that didn't give a shit about anybody's laws, didn't care about society's laws. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. I want to ride a motorcycle. I want to be free. I don't need a license to ride this motorcycle. I don't need to register my bike. If I want to get high and get on this thing and fucking, go 100 miles an hour, I'm free to do it, because I'm a 1%er and I don't care what anybody says. And if you try to get in my face and say whatever you're doing is wrong, we're going to fight. Because I'm a true 1%er. I am that rebel that you can't control. Well, that that quickly. If you stick in that lifestyle of not registering your car and getting insurance and getting a license and driving 90 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour, you're going to spend some time in jail, right? So it's conformity. Eventually, you have to conform to it. But then it grew into this subculture, and the subculture is this: we need to define what the one percenters are, and the one percenters are we are in control of the bad guys, meaning. There are certain major historical clubs globally that control that one percenter patch. And if somebody like you or somebody like Joe Schmo decides, I'm going to be John Smith MC and I'm going to put a rocker in the bottom, you get the top rocker and then your signal patch in the middle. I'm going to be Joe MC and I'm going to have a Arizona bottom rocker. And I'm going to put a 1% patch on there. They're not going to last long, right? Now, you would think in America, we have the freedom to do whatever we want, right? You can do that. Why don't I do that? Put a 1% diamond and I'll ride around and I have an Arizona bottom rocker. And I could do that, but I'll eventually get confronted by the dominant 1% club, which I think in Arizona is the Hells Angels. But and they'll say, that's where we hear the old stories like, we'll take that off because you weren't authorized to put a Virginia rocker and a 1%. We are the only ones that authorize that. Well, this is America. I want to do that whatever I want. Sure. You have the right to do that, but we're going to take it off you one way or another, right? So that's how that 1% dominance factors started.
And to your point, can you talk about two stories? One is, and when you say bottom rocker, that's the bottom patch on the back of the vest. Can you talk about the guy who made up his own in Texas?
Yes.
That guy, and can you also tell the story about the Marines asking for permission to walk around in whatever their uniforms? You told two interesting stories, and it kind of relates to exactly what you're just saying, how they control things.
Yeah, so the story in Texas was an individual that made his own Hells Angel patch. I mean, you could make it, right? They have it's the death head. Right, they call the center patches the death head, and he could have the Hells Angels patch on top. Again, anybody, any seamstress or factory or business could make their own patches. So I don't know the details of this individual. I don't understand the mentality of this individual. Not a very wise decision in his life. But he decides to make this 3-piece patch that said Hell's Angel on top, Death Head in the middle, and very well done. But he put Texas at the bottom, right? So as we had talked about before, the 1%ers are territorial. Certain regions in the U.S. and all over the country, all over the world, are controlled by the certain clubs. And Texas is not a Hell's Angel territory. So he would go to a watering hole or a bar in Texas and wear them. And in Texas, that's a Banditos motorcycle club territory, right? So he walks into this establishment wearing this homemade colors that says Texas bottom rocker. Well, the Hells Angels aren't in Texas. And there's an agreement between them and the Banditos that we're not going to be in Texas. So the Banditos see this and they're like, okay, this guy's either he's either a clown and very stupid, or the Hells Angels are trying to tell us something. And I think they're not stupid. They've kind of figured out that this guy is not very bright, right? The Hells Angels would not do that. If they ever decided to go into Texas, there's communications, like the presidents, and so they would talk to each other and say, hey, we're thinking about opening up a support club in Texas. But it ain't gonna happen, right? If you do it, it ain't gonna happen. That's generally the rule. Like you want to do something, you need permission. There's communications, right? Phone communications, whatever, meetings, however they want to do it. But this guy here they were told, dude, I don't know who you are, the Texas bottom rocker, and he could probably tell in detail that the colors were not genuine, right? So they told him, don't wear them ever again. Get out of here, right? Well, he wore them again, and he kind of was defiant against whomever was telling him not to do it. So eventually, they kill him. He gets executed going into his truck from that establishment, right? So that's kind of shows you how far they will go to defend their territory. I don't know the details of this guy. I don't know what his purpose was. Was he just not that bright or something? But he paid for his life for doing something that was it worth dying for, right? I guess wearing a Texas bottom rocker in Texas, knowing that the banditos control that area. So eventually, like I said, I think it went unsolved for a while. I think they knew who did it, but eventually they did make an arrest on that some years later.
Yeah,
that it was a bandito who did it.
Did I get the story wrong yesterday when you were talking about this Marine?
Oh, that's the separate story. So, so while I was in Myrtle Beach, I was with a sergeant of arms and outside of a convenience store, just sitting outside of a convenience store. And we got approached by, you could tell he was military type of Marine. You could tell the build and the haircut and so forth. And he came up to it was like myself, I'm wearing the prospect patch, and then the full patch guy was next to me, right? And he goes to the full patch guy. He goes, hey, do you have a problem with myself and my brothers that we wear our Marine Corps patch while we're here in Myrtle Beach? And the full patch member looked over at me and goes, you answer that. And I knew the answer, right? Because it's like, again, going back to the politics of the 1%er that you asked about, the 1% patch. The politics is if they want to ride with their colors, they have to ask the dominant club, 1% club, for permission, right? And so this guy here next to me, he's a full patch, and he would be the appropriate person to ask for permission. So I knew the answer would be no, you can't do it, right? Unless he has information where they would allow them to do it. It's like, yeah, you could wear them if you just want to go to this venue or so forth. But in this particular case, they said, no, don't wear them. And it was funny because he goes, he says, if you do wear them, we're going to take them off via violence, right? You're just like, take them off. And if you don't take them off, we're going to take them off for you. But it was funny because he prefaced this by saying, but that's not extortion though. We wouldn't do it that way. It's like, I don't know if he fully trusted me or whatever. It's just like, no, they're not going to be able to wear their colors, and we'll take them off if we had to, but not by force. So it's like this PS note in the bottom, like, but we're not violent. We're not going to do it that way. But that's so the Marine that was there. I'm assuming he was a Marine because he looked like one, and he had a Marine Corps colors. Said, okay, we won't wear them. Mm-hmm. So the protocol was done.
Yes,
that's the protocol.
All right, let's get into your cases and how do you end up getting infiltrating to the point where you go through the process to be a prospect, you're in their clubhouse. How do you get to that point?
So going back to the DEA task force, having worked cases with ATF and arresting some of the members of the pagans and so forth. I had developed sources and that were in that motorcycle realm, right? I'm not a motorcycle person. I'm a detective. I have no infatuation with the lifestyle. I don't have a tattoo, right? I don't have a motorcycle. I just go with what the cases they were giving me, right? So if it's a crack case in Route 1 or a PCP case going down in DC, that's what I did. And then I went with my informants and I tried to emulate them, right? I learned from them. You learn from the criminal element. So essentially in this particular case, it was like I had a history of dealing with maybe the one percenter lifestyle, the drug lifestyle. And that history came from having cooperators and understanding the subculture, just by arresting them and cooperating with them. So the information came out that the Hells Angels wanted to expand again, or try to expand again in Virginia, and that they're going to get the support from a recently opened charter in North Beach. So there's a couple ways to do that, right? There's a couple ways to expand. One of them is you could join or open up or get the permission to open up a support club, right? And then what that support club is, in this particular case, it was called the Red Devils, is basically you get a bunch of people together, 10 members, and you support the closest Hells Angel charter that's in your territory, which would be North Beach, right? North Beach, Maryland. And your goal is you want to be a Hells Angel. You want to have Hells Angels in Virginia, right? Because they had tried a couple of times down in Richmond and they weren't successful in opening up a charter. So the North Beach, the new charter down there, they were kind of isolated. They were really by themselves. And they didn't have a lot of help. Like when I say help, meaning if they have a problem with somebody, they call other clubs or they call other Hells Angels and say, we need help because this other rival club is giving us problems. So they were kind of by themselves and they wanted somebody close to come help them. And they even tested us. There were tests where we would come and they would think that they would say that they were in trouble and we need 4 guys here to help us right now. Let's go. Where are you? Test run, so to speak. But anyway, get ahead of myself. So that's how this process started, and it was simply an introduction to an individual that was a friend of the North Beach Hells Angels that wanted to start this Red Devils charter. And I met them, and I was not really gung-ho about joining. I was actually very resistant. But the communications kept coming back and forth, and they say, it's going to go to one of the parties and get yourself introduced. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to, because I know what it's going to mean. It's going to be trouble, and I've had that in my life. I don't want. That was my cover. I don't need any more trouble in my life. I already had it. Now come on, just go ahead and do it. So you play coy, and eventually you go and you get introduced to the people, and that's how it really all starts. And that's just the introduction, the trust, and you start the process of the politics of getting individuals together, showing up, and trying to make yourself a unit, a club. They call it a club. They make yourself a successful, viable unit to be an asset to the Hells Angels. So in this particular case, it's the Hells Angels. It could be some other club in some other region of the country.
You said as you were doing undercover with these guys, you really had 3 main obstacles. It was violence, it was drugs, and it was sex. Can you explain that?
Sure, because those are kind of pillars of the 1%er life, right? Violence. I mean, how that's a pillar of control, the ultimate control. If I can't control a certain situation with my voice or my presence or multiple people's voice or presence, I'm going to do it anyway, and it's going to be violence. So, we can't. If you're working in any type of under the color of law cases, of which I was, you can't commit violence, right? It's one of the things. There are exceptions we won't get into, but I mean that's that are authorized by the United States Attorney, and you got to get authority to do that. But those are the three things that are like the heartbeat and blood of a 1%er life: violence, control, sex, and dope, getting high, right? And it's funny because it's like a cycle. So if you're been partying all day, all night, and you haven't slept, you just take some more dope and it keeps you going, right? And you get on the bike, and it just, as an individual gets more, how do you say, high or whatever you want to say, it physiologically you get erratic, right? Because you haven't slept for 2 days, you're high on dope, you've been drinking, and you're wide open, right? And I saw that, it's just like, oh my God, like some of these individuals, they were drinking, playing pool and all this stuff, and then they do their dope, and it's just like, whew, keep on going, So it's, and again, the violence is the control, and the partying is with drinking, it's with women, and there's a certain subculture of women. Some of them in certain clubs are different, you have property of, that's property of is a wife or a girlfriend of a certain member in certain clubs, and in some clubs they don't have that property of stuff, right? And there are actually some protocols like, well, if you and I are brothers in a club, right? And I like your old lady, or you like my old lady, I want to have sex with your old lady. You have to ask, right? But in the old school, you didn't even have to ask. And the old lady knows this. She's like, yeah, well, okay. But it's kind of changed. But so now, in this particular organization, they were like, yeah, I like your old lady. Let's hook up or whatever. And then the women are all part of, and I want to say all of them, but you have that certain percentage of individuals that are dysfunctional. They have their own history of bad life, being abused, and then they're being controlled, and then they're being controlled by drugs, and they're used to doing whatever they need to do to survive, right? And they're attracted to individuals like that. So those are the three things. Is I thought, if I can control these three elements, I should be okay.
Yeah. Tell me about the patch process.
Well, you have to you get sponsored by a club, right? And they will school you on what the process is. And the process is basically showing up. When I mean show up, it means like physically showing up to certain events, handling yourself, how to handle yourself. And one of those things, of course, is not being afraid to drop down and fight violence, right? Can't do that, right? But that's all part of it. Not being a jerk, being respectful, because respect is all part of it. Respect in this subculture and respect in law enforcement is all part of it, right? Mm-hmm. There's not much difference. Like if you want to go work for the DEA or being a police officer or detective, there's a certain way you handle yourself, right? If you stand out, you're not going to make it, right? It's the same here, except their rules are a little different. Their rules are really, really different, right? But they expect you to drop down and knock somebody out if needed to. They want you to do that because you're doing it ultimately for the club, right? So they say it's ultimately for the club. So it's that process of being respectful, showing up when you need to show up, go by the rules, because there's a lot of rules. They have lots of rules. They have more rules than I think the freaking police departments do. But the politics, you have to understand the politics, what to talk about, what not to talk about. Don't be bad-mouthing people behind their back, but they do all the time, right? It's like they break their rules all the time. So it's essentially being able to handle yourself in certain situations, and they watch. And if you successfully handle yourself and complete these tasks, so to speak, you'll be a good candidate for, if you really want to be a member, you'd be a good candidate. So the process is generally a year.
Okay.
And they say the general process, you have to either prospect for a year before you become a full patch.
So
that's a Hells Angels world.
How long were you with these guys undercover?
So these guys, I was with 3 clubs.
Okay.
But the 3 clubs, with the Red Devils, the Fates Assembly, and the Hells Angels, it was a little under 2 years, and it was all under the supervision and the purview and the goal of being a Hells Angel, right? So technically, yeah, there were 3 clubs, but the big umbrella is the Hells Angels, right? So it was almost 2 years.
And you ultimately get the goal. I'm horrible at the terminology, but you get your prospect patch, or how?
Yeah. So the ultimate goal, going back, if you want to push back from the beginning, the ultimate goal was, we had some problems with the pagans in our territory, quality of life, right? And then Fairfax in Northern Virginia. It's all about quality of life and not having a criminal element in the neighborhoods, right? Mm-hmm. And so some of them went, we put them in prison. I'd like to say they put themselves in prison, but we just helped them. But the expansion of the Hells Angels into this Northern Virginia territory wasn't something that leadership, not just in Fairfax or the chief in Fairfax, but other jurisdictions, wanted to have. We don't want to have this problem, right? Is it illegal to be a Hells Angel? No, right? But it's just like, again, it comes back to the public now. Public, how does it affect the public and quality of life and all that stuff? So there's we don't want them to come here, just, do some intel gathering and see what their goals are, because ultimately we don't want them here. So we want to kind of stop that from happening. And that's what the initiation of the goal was, is just to collect the information and see what their goals are and what they want to do.
To your point about these guys, all these rules, don't talk about each other behind their back, but yet they do, and there's all these politics and stuff. Can you talk about how it was being in the clubhouse, how it was being in the room where they're making decisions, and in particular, the incident that you kind of played yesterday that was recorded about one guy getting beat up?
Oh yeah.
Because just it seems like for nonsense, right? But can you just
totally for nonsense. I mean, but let me just paraphrase, or let me just define it better. To you, to the general, I think the population, to me, even being in that room, it was nonsense, right? It's total nonsense. But to them, it's a culture, it's respect and disrespect. And if you disrespect anybody, how are you going to pay? What are the 3 things I told you about? You have to overcome. If you disrespect somebody, it's going to be violence. That's how they rule, by a heavy hand, right? And so in this particular case, it was like one person thought he was disrespected, and the politics is that this one person who thought he was disrespected wasn't a full patch, So he has to go to another full patch to get permission in a different state to come to another state to beat up another guy who disrespected him, who thought he disrespected him. In reality, you sit back and go like, wow, this is a lot of politics just to get somebody's ass kicked, right? Just kick his ass. But no, there's a protocol, and you can't break that protocol, right? So it's about control. It's about going by the rules, so to speak. And I understand the fact that if somebody feels disrespected and you're in a very machismo type 1% lifestyle, there's going to be violence. I get it. It's all part of it. That's expected. So it was just the guy got beat up because he thought that somebody badmouthed somebody else in a different state of which he had a relationship with, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the guy who he thought was disrespected in a different state may have even lied to him. The guy got beat up, right? Because they lie all the time, right? They're self-serving. It's self-serving. Yeah, so-and-so was bad-mouthing me. And so he takes, let me clarify. So somebody can tell someone, hey, I was disrespected by a member or by so-and-so, right? And take that to heart. And then he's going to spread that rumor. Well, eventually, if that comes back to the person who did the disrespect to the first person, am I making sense? Mm-hmm. It's a tangled web, but it's very important to them. It's like, okay, so then I have to get permission from a full patch member in a different state, and we have to go together, and then we have to discuss it, and then I got to kick his ass. Okay. I mean, what if you just kicked his ass one-on-one? Like, and he said, well, you can't do that because it's two different states. Okay.
But it's interesting that you're playing the recording of this guy getting his ass beat. You're clearly wearing a wire inside the house. Do you guys have, when you're undercover for that long, you obviously have cover teams on the outside that are covering you every time you're in there. As this is going on and your cover team's listening to somebody getting their ass kicked, how do they know it's not you? And how do they know, is there something you worked out beforehand to go, I'm assuming there's some code words or whatever else, but I'm assuming these guys that are covering you have got to be on high alert at all points to cover you.
I'll tell you a funny story, and I'll answer your question, but I'll tell you a funny story. There was I went, and this was when I was a narc before I was on the task force, and I went into a house, and it was in Pemmon Hills in Fairfax, and it was an old pagan member who's been out of the club. He became a crack addict, right? And I walk into the house, single family house, and again I'm going to answer your question, but I had a cover team with me. It was a brand new lieutenant and one other guy. This is his first night out. The lieutenants, right? And I'm wearing my wire, and I go into the house, and this guy who was selling the crack, the former pagan, he's an older guy, and his life was going downhill. I came in there with a source, and I remember walking into the living room, and it was Monday night because Monday Night Football was on. And there was a black and white TV that was like really poor reception. Like it was gray going in there. There was like a little kid looking at it. He's like 8 years old, right? Looking at the TV, and I walk in, and I'm looking at the TV, and I see the kid, and I'm going like, hey man, how you doing? Who's playing, right? In the meantime, in the kitchen is the crack addict, former pagan, and the source that came in with me to do the introduction, right? They're screaming. He's screaming, saying, why the F did you bring this guy into this house? I don't even see them. I'm sitting here looking at with the eight-year-old, just trying to engage with him because I actually felt sorry for him, right? He's all dirty. looking at a TV that barely had reception. And we just started talking, I started talking to him and pat him on the back. But in the meantime, again, there was some serious screaming and pots and pans being thrown. Why would you, boom, bring in this, bring in that? So the funny story was eventually, as time elapsed, I was able to make a quick buy from this guy and exchange his phone number, and I left. We left and got with the cover team, and the new lieutenant was like, "Please don't tell me it's like this every night." I'm like, no, it's not. I'm going like, I almost came in there to rescue you. And I'm like, I started laughing. And I'm going like, do you actually know what I was doing in there? He's like, well, yeah, I'm in here. There's pots and pans being thrown. This guy screaming, and you told me he's got a history of being a pagan and all this stuff. And I'm like, but actually I was sitting here with an 8-year-old patting him on the back saying, I'm sorry, your TV sucks. That's sad. And why are you in this house with this guy, right? So I was good. Everything was good. And, and he's like, he's just like, I don't know if I'm in for this job. Because I was like, the only reason why, he said later, he's like, the only reason why we didn't come in and save you was because he was with a seasoned guy in there. And he says, Kenny knows how to handle himself. He hasn't said the certain things or whatever. So that's like a story that you won't really know. You hear audio, what's going on, right? No visual, only audio. And in audio, it sounds like all hell's breaking loose. Well, it is, but it's not involving me, right? It's going on with people. So yes, going back to your question is the cover team, you have to respect them, right? And you have to have communications. And there are certain things that, when I was in that scenario, I was worried that they would come in, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a good thing, because you know what? This is one guy kicking the ass of another guy, and I'm just sitting in my chair going, they're just taking care of business, right? There's no threat to me. I'm not getting my ass kicked, and it'll be over. Right, and it was, you heard it. It was over, but I don't want the cover team to come up there, and so that's vital for them to understand that. Okay, if I need help, you're going to hear this, and you're going to hear it multiple times. But for the most part, I got it. I'll handle it, and there have been issues where cover teams have come in and thought something was bad and it wasn't, and that case essentially is dead. Yeah, if that happens, right? Of course, a cover team comes in, that case is done. So yeah, communication, and I would think communication and having the history or the calmness to be able to maybe communicate. I know I'm talking to them, but I got to be careful. I can't stand up and say, oh yeah, one guy's getting his other guy's ass kicked, so everything's good up here. It's not me. You can't say that because you're in a group of people. So
yesterday you told a story that I think would be incredibly stressful, and you're basically planning, going, okay, well, if things go bad, I'm going to shoot this guy, this guy, and this guy. I'm going to jump out the window. Can you tell what happened?
Yeah, it was. I was in the clubhouse in North Beach, and essentially, I was with, I think it was like 8 guys or something. There were eight Virginia guys, and we had been told to come to the clubhouse. I don't know what day it was. And that we think we're going to get our Red Devil support patch, right? Okay, great, let's go. So we get into the clubhouse, we go upstairs. It's a second floor of this old ranch house, and it has a steel door. And as soon as you walk into the room, you could see, the Hells Angels death head and so forth painted on the wall, because that's what they are, right? Everything is Hells Angels. Everything is death. Everything is, that's their life. I get it. And I respect that too. if that's your life and you want to be, enjoy it, right? So we get in there, and you could smell the weed and stuff like that. That's common or whatever. And then everybody says, sit down, everybody sit down. So we sit down, and they had a steel door that had, I believe, 4 locks on it, padlocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm in there, right? And I know that I have a cover team, but they're not going to be any use to me, right? They're actually across the street. I just know that they're there. They're not going to save me. It's a scenario where I have to save myself, and that happens a lot, right? You're in a scenario where my only safety is myself and the way I talk. So I get in there, and they start talking about, yeah, you guys are doing good in Virginia. We need the help here. We've voted and we've decided, let you guys have your Red Devil Support Club patch, right? And we just wanted to get together and tell you that, right? So in the meantime, the president of the Hells Angels said, yeah, everybody's good except me. He said, my name was Poet, and he goes, and I was just like, okay, this is interesting, because I know I didn't tell you the story, but when I sat down in the chair, there was a Hells Angel across the table, and he's just staring at me, just the death head straight ahead staring. It's like this blank stare. And I look over at him, and it's just dead on me, right? So we've all been stared at before. And so the general process of when you're being stared at is, to look away and do whatever you got to do. And you go back to the person who's staring at you, and he's just still staring at me. And I'm like, okay, so here I am. He's staring at me. I'm in this room with 4 locks, and they have a problem with me. So I'm a little concerned, but I think I got this, right? I could figure it out. And I go back to the guy who's staring at me, and he's locked in on me. So I'm feeling very tight. And so my process of thinking is, all right, I have my Glock on me. It's small on my back. And I'm thinking, okay, if I needed to get out of here, I'll pull my gun out and I'll do 2 to the head, 2 to the head, 2 to the head. And then I knew I had to jump off the balcony of the 2nd floor and land in the ground. I didn't want to do that, of course, because you don't want to shoot anybody, right? And it's not all that important. But I don't want to get myself in trouble either, right? Or hurt. So I go back to the guy who's like staring at me, and I just pretended like I dropped something, right? And I bent over to pick it up, and I gazed at him, and he kept on staring this way, right? So he really wasn't staring at me. He was just effed up. He was stoned or high, and he's just like this. So I thought he was staring at me, but he was just effed up, right? So I felt a little bit better. But then in the process, like I have to articulate or plan an escape here, and that was my escape. Was I had to basically shoot my way out. I didn't know if there were guns in that room. I'm assuming that there were. I didn't see any. There were none open. But I'm going to shoot my way out of this, and I'm going to have to jump across the 2nd floor balcony down into this ground pit, which was an old farmhouse where the septic tank was been broken. And it was full of just, poop and pee, and it was nasty. Because it always stunk at that house, because they just didn't fix it. They didn't care. And I would fall into the poop pit, and then I'd run to the gate, and there was Hells Angels at the gate manning the fence, and I'd have to count my rounds, and I'd have to, shoot them to get out, and then go to my cover team across the street, right? That was my plan. Right? That's how you think, right? Well, that's how I was thinking, but I didn't think it was actually going to happen, but I was ready to do it, right? It was either going to be me or them, and it ain't going to be them. Long and short of it was, I talked my way into like, you know, what do you mean? What's your issue with me? What didn't I do, or what haven't I done? And I was eventually, the other guys that I was with, the Virginia guys, they said, no, he's good. We'll vouch for him. And he goes, yeah, we wish we would have saw you more. We didn't see you more, but okay, you're good. You're all good. You're all going to get your patch, right? And then there was a process of smoking dope, right? He goes, before anybody leaves here, we're all going to smoke dope. So I'm going like, okay, so it goes back to the three things, right? Mm-hmm. Violence, drugs, sex. All right, so here's the drug things, right? Violence, I think I got that controlled here, right? I really don't want to shoot my way out, and I'm not going to start worrying about sex here. So all the other guys smoked dope, right? And they're all stoned, and it comes to me, and I said, John, I'm not doing it. And he's like, why? I said, listen, I don't know how well you knew me, or these guys all know me, but I have a history of addiction, right? And I've worked really hard to stay sober. I'm here because I love you guys. And I'm here because I support you, and I want to be part of this organization. But if I get tested for drugs and I fail, I'm going to get fired. And if I'm getting fired, I can't pay my dues, and I'm no good to you. I won't be here. Within a month or so, I'll be gone. And I'm not doing these guys a favor. They're my brothers, and I'm going to stick with them. He's like, okay, that makes sense, no problem. So he understood it, right? And again, one of your strongest weapons, or one of the strongest ways of getting out of trouble, is being able to talk yourself out of trouble. And it worked, right? So the funny story was at the end. I mean, this happened really early in the morning, 2 a.m. We had to go on our motorcycles, and we drove back to Virginia. And these guys, we get on Interstate 95 in PG County, which is 2 a.m. It's a busy, it's the Beltway, Washington, D.C. It's a busy area. And 2 a.m, most people are hauling ass, right? It's just like 80 miles an hour is the norm, right? And these guys have just stayed in a little pack, little motorcycles, and they're like going like 55, 60 miles an hour. And I'm on my bike, and I'm not high, right? And I'm upset because they're going so damn slow. And I'm going up to them, and this is on the interstate, and I'm going up to them, going, let's go, let's move. And they wouldn't even look over at me. They're just like, he's just going really slow. And so we eventually went back to Virginia, and I was rather irate. And I said, what's the deal with you guys? Why were you going so slow? And what happened? And then they looked at me, and they're like, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, what do you mean, am I okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm like, you were going like 120 miles an hour. And, we couldn't keep up with you. I'm like, I was going 70. What are you talking about? And then, of course, like I said before, it's like, it hit me that they're all stoned, right? They're all just sitting there going, in a little pack, going 55 miles an hour. I'm going 70. But in their mind, I was going 120.
Yeah.
And so.
Was this the same, when you go through that whole process, was that the one where they thought you were wearing a wire? Is that a different one?
No, that's the end.
Okay, all right, we'll get to that. One thing I thought was really interesting was I didn't realize how much money it costs to be part of a club. Can you explain that?
They tell you it's expensive. You're going to pay a lot of money. And the money's not just going for your particular charter or it goes to other charters in your region. And explain why. So whenever there's let's say that there's an arrest for somebody, right? And let's say if it's multiple arrests, conspiracy for several members, supporters, or whatever, they get arrested on charges, state, federal, whatever the charges are. the organization meets and they vote to give financial assistance to the individuals that got arrested. And how do they do that? The financial assistance comes from all the charters. They all pay a defense fund, right? So it's like so-and-so and so-and-so, and these 4 guys got arrested in New Hampshire or whatever charter, South Carolina, wherever. They're all hemmed up. We got them out of jail. We had to pay for the jail. Now we got to pay for their lawyers. We all pay for their lawyers. So it's just not what's common is it's called a defense fund, right? There's the open defense fund. When I say open, I mean you could go on their website and say defense fund for Joe Blow, contribute. Right? Okay, click on there and contribute to a Joe Blow defense fund. That's open. But then there's the one that's not open. Those are the ones that you have this charter meeting where they agree that we all pay for his defense. We all have to ante up $200. $200. Really, $200 for a defense is nothing. Right? We know that, right? So every charter puts the money in an envelope, and we go to the next. They call them ECOMs, East Coast Officers Meeting, and then they pony up and say, this is the money from our charter, we've collected the money. So yes, that's how you're paying up for the defense of an individual that got arrested in 3 states away from you, and you have no involvement whatsoever. I think that's a connection to a centralized leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all paying for his defense fund. So there's a connection. If they like to say, well, we're all individual charters. Well, yeah, they kind of are they say they're autonomous with, we're not really connected. Why do you have officers meetings every, I don't know how many months they have officers meeting where they discuss business. So
yeah, that's interesting. You'd think that would be a way you can prove money coming in. You could do one large conspiracy, and depending on what
that's the way I think.
Yeah. Huh. Okay, so
just to conclude,
yeah.
There are other expenses too, right?
Okay.
Like travel. Like, okay, so we have to send 2 members to a funeral in South Carolina. Okay, well, that's travel and a hotel and all stuff. We all have to ante up monies for the 2 guys to go to the funeral or go to a party, because sometimes there's mandatory parties. I think I described yesterday, going back to the funerals, and how some of these funerals to the public look impressive. Like, oh my God, this Hell's Angel guy died on a motorcycle wreck. It's terrible. And look at all the support he got here. All these members from all over the East Coast are showing up for their support. Well, they're showing up because they have to show up. They have to send 2 members. So I've been in a scenario where I had 1 member say, yeah, I got to go to a funeral because so-and-so and so died and ran into a guardrail and he died. I don't want to go, but we got to go. So it's kind of like it's a facade. Like the general public saying, wow, that's a true brotherhood. But the true brotherhood inside is like, when can I leave? Because, I'm done here. Okay. So.
Yeah. Can you give an average? I mean, I don't know if you can come up with an amount. Can you give your average amount of how much you think it costs to be like on a monthly basis? How much are you shelling out in this type of stuff?
So it's if it's a new charter, if it's something that's new, like what we were at, God, I forget. I mean, it depends on what's happening. Like you have to go to mandatory Sturgis, and you have to go to there were certain mandatory runs that we had to go to show our representation, right? It's generally 2 people. You don't go send 1 person, you send 2. I don't know the actual numbers. The treasurer would know that stuff, but it was it's a little different in other older charters because they generate money. However, they generate money. so they'll be able to self-sustain their finances. But if it's a younger one, a striving one, like the one that we were in, it's expensive. And it's openly known. You could even it's open source. It's like, if you're a Hell's Angel or a Bandito or outlaw, whatever the big ones are, we're not on a salary. It's not, it's not like a job, but it is like a job.
Yeah.
It's a job. I mean, you go to sleep as a Hell's Angel, you wake up as a Hell's Angel, right? It's a job, but there's no benefits. You don't get Medicare, you don't get a medical insurance and a 401k. But it's so. I think a lot of times it becomes burdensome on certain people. It's like, I just can't afford this. This is like too expensive. And if I go to jail, and they vote not to support me on the charges that I went to jail with, which is kind of likely that they're not going to vote to support you. They leave you out on your own. So much for the brotherhood. But there's like, I'm here, I did this, thinking that I was loyal, and now I'm in jail, thinking that I was loyal, and I have to fight these charges because I was loyal. I'm out $50K. Why did I do this? It's a facade.
I'm going to reference this show a couple times just for specific reasons, but Sons of Anarchy. Most people are watching Sons of Anarchy and they have a certain idea how a motorcycle club is. I'm curious about this. Is it there's the Mayans, and then there's a black group, and then there's an Asian group. Is that how it is, or is it? I think most people would think that a motorcycle gang is kind of like about white supremacy and only white guys. Is that what it is, or did you run across other biker groups that were of different ethnicities?
Yeah, of course I did. So the Hells Angels will say that you're not allowed to have any blacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know of a couple of individuals that the way that they, and again, I'm not deeply, I wasn't a full patched guy, I didn't know all the intricacies in the politics, but there are individuals that they would say, no, they're not black, they're Dominican. That's their excuse, right? Because that individual, whoever that person is, he's bringing something to the club, right? If he's black or dark skinned, that's against the bylaws, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they always break the bylaws anyway. Bylaws are just guidelines. So if he's black and he's bringing something in, yeah, they're very racist. Of course they are. But they'll say, well, he's really not black, he's Dominican. So, yeah, no, it's justification for whatever rule that they break their own rules, right? Again, I like to say bylaws are just guidelines. So, and then there are other clubs that are African American clubs that I never really came in contact with them. But the first one was a motorcycle show that we had in Richmond, and there was quite a bit of I think their Thunder Guards were there. They weren't shy. They knew that the Hells Angels were in this show in Richmond, and they made it known that we're here and we know you're here and we ain't afraid of you, right? It's that it's the dominant state, right? So, but I never had any interaction with them. You just know that they were there, and they had the same culture, right? This is the other thing that we talked about earlier. Same subculture, right? 3-piece patch, 1%er, same rules, but they kill each other for it. But wait a minute here. We're all here together for the lifestyle, man. We're all here together for the subculture, for freedom. Freedom that we do what we want to do. But if you're from this state and you wear a different patch, dude, I gotta kill you, man. I'm supposed to, and I realize that you're supposed to kill me. But wait a minute. You just got the same vests on. You just got different colors and different, same lifestyle. It's like, it's fascinating. But it goes back to what I told you about early on. It's all about control, right? And how do you maintain control? Through violence. And we're the superior ones. I don't want to say it's kind of like a religion, but it kind of is. It's like, our religion is superior, so yours isn't. Well, our club is superior, so yours isn't. But it's the same colors. It's the same patches. It's the same lifestyle. You have clubhouses. You have rules. You have parties. You have the same type of goal, function, subculture. But you kill each other for it, and you're expected to kill each other for it. So, fascinating.
Yeah.
Truly fascinating.
You're undercover with these guys for a couple years. And ultimately, you were in there for drugs. What illegal stuff are they doing while you're in there? What are they involved in?
Well, this group that I was with, they were fairly clean because they didn't want to really screw up all that much. But what they'll do is, but within being with this group, you bled into being with other groups.
Yeah.
So in this particular group, in the New York, the New Rochelle charter was definitely firearms trafficking and the quality of drugs. Like, for example, the guy who sponsored me, I think I said that, he was down in Virginia and they were partying, and he had openly said, your cocaine sucks here, right? I don't know who we got it from. I don't know that he says, but we got to change that. Okay, all right, whatever. So that's the goal, right? Is to bring the market down. And he goes, Virginia is a easy gun state. We have a war up here in New York. We need your guns, and I need you to do it. Okay, so that's a little bit of a problem because I can't be selling guns to gang members, right? But that was the big push. But to answer your question, is anything that would be a way to bring in money, they're open to it.
Where were they getting their guns from?
I don't know. Because that was to the state. I mean, the drugs that I bought, and the arrests that I made were small local drugs. There were small purchases. There was no big kilograms, and we weren't pushing all that stuff. But I don't know. We were going to get to that spot, but the hurdle was, and then of course I got compromised. But the hurdle was the guns. And they wanted guns from us, and we can't do that, right? So they just knew that the drugs that whenever they came down, and they'd bring their own, and I got some dope from them and sent it to the lab, and they ended up charging some guys in a conspiracy, and I got a gun, 2 guns. They were not happy with the drugs that they had here when they were in Virginia. And it was clearly like, at least I could just go with what my sponsor was saying is, your drugs here suck, and that's got to change. Fair enough. I mean, so what is that? That's a forecast.
Yeah.
That's a forecast of what they're going to do. And I need your guns.
Yeah. Referencing Sons of Anarchy again, and you and I talked about this yesterday. Part of the arc of that show was this Ireland connection.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something yesterday, and I thought it was really fascinating. You can talk about how that all played out.
Sure. There was a guy who was not a biker. He's from Rahway, I think, in New Jersey. I can't remember. I think of Raleigh. Not a very nice area, but we met him at a bike show, and he came up to me, and he gave me some free hash, right? Now he sees that I'm at a booth, and so I'm kind of vetted already because I'm wearing the colors and all that stuff. So I took his hash. I'm like, this is good, Nate. Thanks, appreciate it. Give me a number, right? Because I could move this. But I'm doing this off to the side, right? He's like, sure, yeah. So he gave me his card. We communicated. We did actually some drug deals through the mail. It was postal service. And then we agreed to, he was very open. He was not a 1%er. This was like he was detached from the group.
But ultimately, he ends up contacting you because you are part of a group.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So to him, I think he saw me as being vetted.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a safe guy. Right? So he was very open. He says, the hash, he goes, the hash ain't shit. I could get you as much hash as you want. I said, that's fine. I make a little money on the hash, but we do that. He's going, what I really need is, and he was very open about it. He was just like, I need ammunition. And I need guns. And I have a friend in Ireland who does it. And I go, okay, that's doable, but how do you do it? Like, play stupid. He says, yeah, it's easy. We'll put, he goes, I get motorcycles. I didn't ask how he got them, but that's probably the reason why he was at this bike show, right?
Mm-hmm.
I break them down and I will sprinkle ammunitions in the gas tank. I'll put, I'll put like a towel on the bottom and I'll stuff it with a bunch of ammunition. Because ammunition is very rare, difficult to get in Ireland, right? So I'm like, okay, so tell me more. He had diarrhea of the mouth. He's very proud of it, right? He goes, yeah, I'll ship 15, 16 bikes. I'll break them down. Because it's near New Jersey, where there's a port there. He lives near where a port is, where they would transport the stuff to Ireland. He goes, yep, I box them up and take them to the center and it gets shipped. And I send it to a certain guy. And this guy pays premium and I make money on it. So I see you're from Virginia. Can we do business? So that it's like separate from what's going on I'm doing over here with these guys. I'm like, okay, so what are you saying? He goes, I want ammunition and guns, and I'll break them down. You don't have to worry about it, but I'll pay prime. And that's where it's going. And he didn't get the name of the guy. Sean Kelly was his name, right? He was almost too open, but he was just kind of like a mope. But anyway, long and short of it is, we did take him down. We agreed to take him, do a transaction in the parking lot, and we took him down. And he pled guilty in federal court and cooperated. We did a search warrant at his house and found a lot of stuff in his house. He was living with his mom in New Jersey, and that led to, I think it was maybe a year later, I got a letter from LaGuardia, which was it's saying in reference to Sean Kelly. We just wanted to let you know that we were successfully able to arrest him and a network that he had worked with, just basically by taking some hash from a guy.
Super cool.
So, it's just like, that's all it is. It's like, generally, it's just like, I don't want your hash. Well, none of that would have happened if I didn't take the hash and push it a little bit, right?
Yeah, and it gets back to how we started the interview, which is, hey, I don't want to do one thing. I'm gonna see where this goes.
See where it goes.
Yeah.
We'll push it to the end, and if it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, and that's what makes.
So that was interesting. Another funny story. I'll just we'll stop on Sal was his name. He wanted to talk to me, and he was in Fort Dix, federal penitentiary in Fort Dix, New Jersey, right? And I said, okay. The AUSA says, yeah, go talk to him. His lawyer wants to talk because I guess he has something else to say. Whatever. He got his sentencing, and he'll get some time off cooperating. I've never been to Fort Dix before, right? I pull in, I had my Tahoe, right? And then That wasn't, because Fort Dix is also a military base, right? It's a federal penitentiary too, right?
Mm.
Big complex. And I'll never forget this, that I pulled in, and I don't know, this is kind of off the subject, but I pulled in and I'm driving, not knowing where I'm going to go, because I know I'm late. His lawyer's waiting for me to get briefed and all that stuff. And all of a sudden I see 3 Tahoes coming behind me with their lights on. 2 of them knock me in, not physical contact, get out. And I'm like, what did I do? It's like, what did I do? Because I'm still long hair or whatever. And then long and short is I went into the wrong entrance. And I just said, dude, I'm just here to interview a prisoner. And they're like, I was like, I've never been drawn down on that. It's a little bit of a sobering experience.
Yeah.
They're like, and they start screaming. I'm like, you know what? You're supposed to go over here and all that stuff. I'm going, dude, I am sorry. I've never been here. I will go over there. I apologize profusely. Please let me just go. Get out of here. You know.
All right.
We got to have fun.
Yeah. How do you get compromised, and what draws this case to a conclusion?
The compromise. There was a female undercover that I utilized that assisted with the 3rd pillar of obstruction, what's the violence, drugs, and sex. So if she's around, that kind of eliminates the sex problem, which is great, right? She was out personally with her boyfriend, and she was with people at a party. She had a motorcycle, and her boyfriend had a motorcycle, and she was talking to certain people, and she said, I'm a police officer, and we're actually investigating the Hells Angels charter in Virginia, right? And then so she really didn't know who she was talking to, and she was talking to somebody that was part of that organization, a female, and that female says, "Well, that's interesting because my husband is part of that organization, right?" And she's like, "This is not good, right? This is not good. I've just compromised me." Because she had been around with me, helping me with that 3rd pillar or 3rd problem, so to speak. So naivety. She said that the person that she said this to was just like, "Don't worry, I won't say anything. We're good." And so she believed that person. Wouldn't say anything, but of course that person did, right?
Yeah.
I would. If my husband was part of the Hells Angels and somebody just told me they're investigating him, I would.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was. So the bad part about it was that she did not, the undercover did not tell me this confrontation happened, right? And that's not good, right? If it happened, it happened. Life is life, right? Things. We'll work on it, and we'll move on. Obstacles, big case, big problems, right? No case, no problems. So okay, but she didn't, and that was a big deal, because eventually I was called into them, as they would always say, that was emergency meeting. We need an emergency meeting. Something's come up, and you need to be there. Okay, so I again show up. Get with the cover team, wearing my wire, and I get in there, and I could sense right away when I walked in there that it wasn't normal, right? As like I was like this black bobcat in a room of a bunch of leopards, right? I was like, everybody's looking at me different. Like, okay, but something ain't right. But I've been in that scenario before. I'll talk my way out of it, whatever. And that's when I get confronted, like, how did you really know her? How did you find out? How did you meet her? And we had the story, the same story of what we said over and over again, which worked. And I said, well, she's a cop. They said, she's a cop. And I go like, no, she ain't a cop. What the fuck are you talking about? She ain't a cop. No, she's a cop. And who are you? So I'm like going like, dude, this is messed up. I don't know what you're talking about. She says, yeah. How did you meet her again? And who are you? Right, so I'm going like, okay. Stomach drops a little bit, right? And that's going like, I know I have a cover team and the wire's working. I go like, okay. Well, if she's a cop, I'm in trouble. And they said, well, how? I says, well, I beat her up a little bit and I'd give her some dope. And they went on and said, what could they get on you? And I said, well, they could get me for selling dope. And they can get me for violence, domestic violence. I guess it's not looking good for me, is it? They're like, no, it's not looking good for you. I'm going like, okay. I still can't believe she's a cop because she was freaking getting high with me and all this stuff. I mean, not high with me, but she was getting, I started building up like she was getting high and I was trying to stop her from doing that. And she can't be a cop. And then they conclude, they're saying, well, we think we figured it out that they targeted you. The drug task force, Northern Virginia Drug Task Force, and she's part of it, targeted you. And that's why you were targeted. And I said, okay, all right. So I guess I have to disappear a little bit, right? Not like to disappear, but to go away. And they're like, yeah, you need to disappear. I'm like, okay, so I'll go up to Pennsylvania, and this really sucks because I have a lot of work I need to do. And they said, well, yeah, but we're not done. I said, okay, what else you want me to do? He's like, the lady that put me in jail in Maryland 15 years ago was wearing a wire. And are you wearing a wire? And that's where I got kind of upset. It was actually rather confrontational. And again, it's all being transmitted on the wire. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're saying. What are you talking about? I ain't wearing no wire. And I get angry, right? I get really loud and really confrontational. And they go, yeah, you need to strip. And I'm like, okay, and I take my cuts off and I took my shirt off, but the wire was running on my belt, and I'm going like, that's all I'm taking off, man. I ain't getting naked in front of you guys. Ain't no way. You want to come over here and search me in my privates? I didn't say it that way, but it's, come on over here and do it, man. Come on over and do it. They're like, okay, you're good. Put your shirt back on. And so I really wasn't that close to giving to let the cover team come help me, because I felt that I was in control for the most part, right? Because I had put my gun there, and then put my shirt back on, and then we just talked about. They said they went right back into business. They're like, okay, you're good. She's got to stay away. I'm like, yeah, no shit, right? She's got to stay away. And then she said, oh yeah, and by the way, we need you to go to Boston next week because there's a meeting and a party in Boston. They went right on to it, and I'm just like going like, okay, I gotta go to Boston. Great, yeah, it's great because they trusted me. I'm assuming they trusted me. Who knows if I went to Boston, what would have happened? So that was the compromise, and then the conclusion was, okay, well, this party or this case has run out of gas. Let's do what we got to do and collect all the intel. And we put together some arrest warrants and search warrants within 6 to 8 days, and executed them. And they still, when I left that meeting, they still were calling me just like nothing happened, right? And my supervisor was like, they want you to go to Boston. They think everything's good. You were with a cop for 7 months and they think it's good. I said, they think it's good. And I'm going like, you know why they think it's good? Because they don't want bad news. This is hurting their prospects of being a full patch. So they want to like pretend that, let's get a nice big rug and sweep it under the rug. And we won't tell anybody that, you know, this guy was dating a cop in an undercover capacity, and we'll just continue to go to Boston and continue. That's what their goal was. That's what they really wanted. This was bad news, but they were willing to take that risk to continue to go. So that's how it ended, and we did the arrest warrants and the search warrants, and from there.
And even
had a couple trials.
And even when this was concluding, as you were arresting people, they were just comical quotes from these guys. They still didn't want to believe you were a cop.
They didn't. And that's kind of normal.
Sure.
You know, that in any type of sting or undercover or buys, it's like, you know, the funny ones were like, yeah, I knew he was a cop. I knew the first time I saw him he was a cop. Yeah. Oh, why'd you sell him drugs? Well, I mean, I thought he was a dirty cop. All right. Okay, whatever. It's just like, it's that rationalization. But
how about the guy who signs his book for you?
Oh, Sonny Barger. Yeah. At the same bike show in New Jersey. Same bike show in New Jersey that I met Sal. He was selling his book there.
Yeah. And what was his quote? I think he said something.
Well, his quote has been legendary. It's like, no law enforcement officer has ever infiltrated the Hells Angels.
And he signs
my book. So it's like, poet Virginia Prospect. I think it's just keep riding, Sonny. Yeah, it's so we did all that, went to trial, had a couple trials, plead guilty. So that was the end. And they did the charters were shut down. So ultimately, based on whatever was done in the last 2 years or whatever. And mind you now, I just want to say that I was also living a life. You know, I had an undercover apartment, which I really didn't use that much.
Mm-hmm.
But I was living a life. I had personal stuff going on, right? A family, right?
Yeah.
So that was a little bit strenuous, and it was tough balance. I tried my best, like everything. I got this. To balance that was a struggle. But a lot was learned through the experience. After it was done, I was asked, still being part of the intel squad where I was at, to set up a storefront. Because I had my fake ID and all that stuff. And then I went ahead and did that. I set up a storefront and was working a lot of hours doing the storefront. So I'm just coming right off this 2-year Hells Angel case, and now I'm jumping into a storefront where I signed the lease, I found the place, I set up the training, we did set up the cameras and all that stuff. It was a bit taxing, and it was taking up a lot of time, right? And eventually I was just like, this is too much. It's wreaked havoc on my personal life. So I requested to go to get transferred to, there was an opening at the JTTF. And so I joined the JTTF and worked. I just moved my expertise from these guys to the jihadists on the JTTF.
Yes, the JTTF audience is Joint Terrorism Task Force. Okay, before I ask you some questions about the family and undercover and stuff, did you ever have, they talk about Stockholm syndrome, right? Where you're hanging out with these guys and everything. Did you ever have any guilt, anything else from these guys? You always were able to keep that separate?
I don't. I mean, there were individuals I think I talked about earlier that, you know, you get a friendship with, because I was traveling to different places. You see the same guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys I think I talked about where he had said that this is my family. These guys are my family, because I didn't have a family. And it's interesting, because in life, early on, I want to be Joe Don Baker, right? I want to get the bad guys. I want to get the criminals. Well, as you mature and wisdom comes into one's life, you see that many of these criminals, whatever crime they're doing, they're made that way, right? So to speak, right? They have child abuse, sexual abuse. They grew up in families that were dysfunctional, and they didn't know any different, right? So as a kid, I was raised in a very normal society, very nice, clean, supportive family. But as I were arresting these people in my career, I didn't really look at them as individuals. I looked at them as violators, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you broke the law and I had to arrest you. Yeah, but dude, I broke the law because of A, B, C, and D. You don't understand my life. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
Right? But as you get older, you see these cases where people were victims young, right? And then they just grew up in dysfunctional homes, and they didn't have the moral structure that you and I had growing up. They just had this dysfunctional type of life. And a lot of that, when we're talking about the individuals with Stockholm syndrome, you meet people like that. You meet them. There was one guy in Omaha, Charter in Omaha, we've gone back and forth. And he was a stone cold white supremacist, had the Nazi tattoos here. And the guy who sponsored him, he was a prospect at the time. And the guy who sponsored him in the Omaha, he was a lifelong Klans member and all that stuff. And it's like, that's how he was raised. What is he going to do? Say, that's his life. It's his existence. That's all he knew. And as we got older, we realized that, okay, so you're breaking the law. I'm sorry, I'm up there. And he's like, okay, put me in jail, but that's who I am, right? Or my parents got high all the time, and I moved drugs for them because I didn't have any food or I didn't have any clothes. That's how I lived, and that's all I knew. That's all I know, and that kind of affects you as you get older. It's just like, yeah, that's messed up. Like, maybe we could. It goes back to the little story that I told you about. A little 18-year-old is watching a furry TV, on Monday Night Football. Literally, when I was standing there, I'm like, what's this kid going to be like? What's he going to be like? Because I just gave him a little bit of attention, right? What do you want? Well, what's the score? And he's like, I can't see. I can't see. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I'm not going to have Stockholm syndrome for an individual whose dad was a white supremacist and he's a white supremacist. We all choose our path, yeah. Right? And there's always individuals that see a path that's different. Like my dad was like this, or my mom was like this. My mom was a drug addict. Well, you know what? I don't want to be a drug addict. Or I don't want to be hateful like my dad. So you see them and you understand them. It doesn't mean I support them like in a Stockholm. I didn't have any.
Yeah, I was just wondering, maybe there was one or two that had some redeeming qualities where you
sure.
Like, yeah. I kind of like this guy, just kind of relate on a superfluous level, I guess.
There were actually individuals such as that I've actually told them when we were doing this. I said, you don't want to get involved in this. What are you doing? I said, what do you mean, man? It's just cool. I said, yeah, they get the facade that's being preached. There's a preacher at the church who's telling you that all this, he's telling you the gospel. I'm not picking on religion, but it's like, this is the way it is. Everything is black and white. We got you. It's a brotherhood. We will always have you. Well, you know what? Deep down under that boiling pot, it ain't no brotherhood. It's about one, and that one person is you. And that brotherhood will stab you in the back in a heartbeat. But they see it as the facade. They see it as the guy who's wearing cuts, the colors that walks into that 7-Eleven that gets attention, and their insecurities want them to. And it's like, you know what? The more you get involved in this, I think maybe it's not really what you should do. And there was one guy who was a volunteer fireman that I actually said that to him. It's just like, what are you doing, man? Why are you with these guys? He's like, oh, I like to ride, and they're cool. And it's just like, okay, but you know what these guys are going to do, right? You know, and I made it like not all about me, but I'm like, what if I ask you to do this? Would you do it? Oh man, I ain't gonna violate the law. Well, what if I just told you next week I want to have this? You want to be part of this group? I want you to do this. What would you do? I ain't gonna do it. So why are you here? Why are you here? And the organization accepts that, right? It's like, you know, what's the old saying? Are we an organization of criminals, or are we a criminal organization? There's a balance between both, right? I think it's more of they're an organization with criminals, right? They accept the criminals as part of their persona, because let's face it, criminals are feared. So we want this reputation to be feared, and we need people to do that, right? So there's always been that connection of, you know, how do you connect the HA or any other organization as a criminal organization?
Mm.
That debate: are we criminals in an organization, or are we an organized criminal?
Yeah.
But it never. So to answer your question, is that there was that one guy who was a fireman that I was just like, why? He was into bikes. He liked his Harley, right? He liked riding, right? But why do you need to be associated with the club?
Right.
Well, I want to be associated with the club because I want to be somebody. It's an identity for me.
Yeah.
Fireman's not enough.
Okay, so last two questions. I'm very interested in this, and I know part of your perspective because you've told a little bit about this last couple of days when I've been talking to you. But like with DEA, I did undercover, but it was never long term.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a long term undercover thing, probably stressful, taking a toll on your family, but you're also a guy that is driven. Even with the narcotic stuff, you're going after the bigger cases, storefronts. You're going after the bigger things. How did law enforcement affect your family?
It did. It was the phone was always going off, right? And I tried my best. I think I did well. I'll tell you one story is I was in a bike show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it was a long day, and I left there. I needed to coach my basketball team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get to the school at a certain time. So I'm living two lives, right? And I'm getting in my truck after this, doing this little thing with them, and I'm hauling down 81, and I get pulled over by a trooper, right? And I stayed in roll. I gave them, you know, my undercover ID identification and so forth. And I said, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I have an issue with the family. You want to write me a ticket? Write me a ticket. I'll sign it. I respect you. I sped. And he didn't write a ticket, right? He said, okay, just slow it down, right? I had my colors off. I'd taken it, but so I had actually kind of planned, like once I got to the school, I actually changed because I wanted to look like, I don't want to wear like the clothes that undercover clothes that go into a school and be a coach. So I tried my best. I think I did well to do the balance of both. That's a strain and a I think I just did my best, right? I did not want to compromise the family for a case, right? And although I hate saying a case because it was a series of just pushing intel and so forth. But yeah, it was a balance. And I think that my morality maintained my priorities were straight. But I think it ultimately, my mentality, it hurt the family.
Obviously, it hurt your family, your relationship with your wife, though.
It did.
Yeah. I mean, did all that... You think it was law enforcement and the job that ultimately ended that?
Without getting too personal, I think I had a lot to do with it, yes. Okay. Of course. It was consuming.
How about this? You tell an interesting story about your son, right? You see it in a different way than your son was seeing it at the time.
Absolutely.
Can you tell that story?
Yeah, I recently was talking to him about what I had done and so forth, and at the conclusion of the case, they had the government came in and they set up some cameras in my house for my for my protection or whatever, and I feel bad. It's like, was this really worth it? Was this really smart? Because look, you have cameras in our house. Is this worth it? Right? And I was challenging myself. It's like, okay, let's balance priorities here. So, and I brought that up. He brought it up. And it was funny because I felt bad. And he told me, he said, what do you feel bad for? I guess it's like, those cameras shouldn't have been there. The actions that I have taken, even though I felt I was doing the right thing, it shouldn't have been in the home. He goes, no, Dad, it was cool as hell. I'm like, what do you mean it was cool as hell? I was like, the cameras were in the house and stuff like that. It's like, that was really cool. I thought it was cool. I'm just like, so I'm seeing it in a different eyes. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we look through different lenses. We come to a conclusion about certain things, right? But it really wasn't that way. He goes, I asked my sister, did it affect you or anything? He's like, no, that was cool. In fact, I told my friends, he goes, I told my friends, like, there's cameras in our house because of some of the work that my dad did. Well, in retrospect, I'm thinking, that's kind of effed up. There shouldn't be cameras in the house.
Yeah. But even the clothes that you had to take off and leave in the garage, yeah. You remember that too?
Yeah, of course. My stinky clothes, man. I was not allowed to bring the stinky clothes in the house. And I don't blame it. It's like, yeah. But when you're out there with these guys, and some of the clothes I didn't wash for a while, because really my persona was like I was a criminal, right? Mm-hmm. Not really a biker guy, but a criminal. And yeah, so it was. We were in certain places. You got the cigarette smoke, and so yeah, I would keep that. Those clothes were not allowed to go in the house.
But your son would specifically say, "Hey, I remember those clothes being out there, and I knew you were working."
Stinky clothes. And same thing. Not only that, but same thing with telephones, right? So you had 3 phones, and they were all going off. You had the Fed phone, and you had local phone, and you had the undercover phone, right? So I remember I told them, never answer this phone here. This is bad guy phone, right? Whatever. Oh, bad guy phone. Okay. So I remember one time my kids came to me and said, Dad, bad guy phone going off. I was like, because it always was going off. It's like, thank you for not answering it. Yeah, so it's stuff like that. So in retrospect, should I have done it? Well, I guess that's just my nature, right?
Yeah.
I think I was doing the right thing. Yeah. You're doing the right thing. You work through that.
Yeah. Last question for you. Can you look back on when you started with Secret Service to now? Did being in law enforcement affect the way that you see people?
Yeah, I think I covered that a little bit about how being in law enforcement early on was very black and white, right? You violated the law, there's laws, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to get arrested, right? But as you get older and you see people and you understand what I really understand is, I still to this day, what makes people tick, I find it fascinating because what makes you tick and what makes me tick is two totally different things. What makes the fentanyl addict in Philadelphia, or the heroin, or maybe the crack dealer, or the gang member, what makes you tick? What makes you tick? What makes you tick? It's not all black and white. There's this gray area. And to understand what makes this person tick, the gang member who's slinging crack, and understand the gang member here who's selling fentanyl, and the cartel member over here who's selling and ruining lives, but he knows he is, what makes them tick? At the conclusion of my life, or my career, is there's a big gray area. And in order to, and I think I kind of learned that early on, because that was the key to making me have a successful source, successful informant. Like, dude, I am sorry what happened to you as a kid. Genuinely am. And you know what? When I say that, I am. I'm sorry what happened to you as a kid. That's horrible. I don't know how I would have reacted. I may have been in this, we may be in different chairs. If I was doing the same thing that you did, I understand that. And so it's young cop, it's black and white. I'm locking you up. I don't care about what happened to you as a kid. I don't care about what happened to you as you grew up. I don't care about what happened to your family. As you get older, it means more. You see them as you see people as people. Where back then you see as just black and white.
Yeah.
And that was the major difference. And I like that wisdom as it went older, because you had the ability to maybe make somebody go right, or not necessarily go right, but go on the right path. Like the story I told you about with Joe, right? Like Joe coached this kid. Joe's kid now is in Virginia Tech. Joe would have been in prison. And so at the conclusion of your career, you're like, you know what? I don't know if how many people I affected. I don't think I'll ever find out how many people I affected. Joe was just one example of the connection was still there, right? But I think that I have engaged with individuals in my life that made their life stronger and gave them purpose because of some of the things that maybe I have done to change that. That's why I think law enforcement is a honorable profession, because our noble cause is to really maintain peace and order, but also to change lives, right? And I'm a big supporter of good over evil. Well, we're also on a planet here where it's like it's not always like that, right? We have wars and all this stuff. So, but law enforcement, police work is honorable because we want to do the right thing, right? And we don't know at the conclusion of our career how many people were really affected. I'd like to think there would be quite a few. So, yeah. To answer your question, that's the change that I saw from early on till later. I see people as people, rather than people as just handcuffs.
Thanks for an interview, Ken.
Sure.
It was great. Appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you.